Hello guys and welcome to my more or less update slash outlook on the new version of Kerbal Space Program, otherwise known as the 0.24 update. This update is very huge because it implements two new ideas. One, which is your rating, and the other is a form of money which you have to use to buy pieces and parts for your rockets. Now this has been very big in the fan base for this game because some people are worried that it may be overpricing stuff, meaning that you won't be able to build big complicated rockets and you may in fact get to the point where you are stuck, where you can no longer buy anything or do anything because of the amount of money you have. More or less you go broke and the game ends. Kind of. The other big problem with it is that it may be overbalanced, meaning that, yeah, it's still the same as just playing in Sandbox, but with the science and some of the other stuff. But as you can see, credits will come into that. You have your credits on the left, your reputation in the middle, and then of course your handy-dandy science meter on the right. The reputation is going to be key in this because that's kind of your rating. Like, if you were to give a space program a rating based off of its efficiency and the lethalities and the failed missions, that's more or less what it is. It's popularity. As you can see, the research and development hasn't changed. They still have the timer at the bottom, but instead this goes by years, days, hours, minutes, seconds, which means that they're more or less the simulation of Kerbal will be continuously following one timeline, meaning that you can look up orbital trajectories, and then therefore, for instance, if you know that Eve has a easy way so that you can swing by Eve and Gilly every 27 days and 8 hours, you can do that. And going back to the research lab, each part now has a cost to it, which is one of the main reasons. If you head over to the VAB, what you can find is at the bottom left, and I'm sorry for the recording software not being able to run in full screen, but if you look at the very bottom left, there was a counter, which means that it requires you to have a limit on your parts. Now, this is the new the other main part of this, which are contracts. Now these give you money to build, and I'll just go over some of the basics. So if you look, you have your star rating, which I guess could be your credibility. So the more credibility you get, the better contracts you get. So if you look, you have your level, you have your objective, you have your advance, which is to more or less build the rocket. You have your completion, which is once you're done, how much do you get to kind of mess around with, toy with, be creative with. You can see it also gives you science and the stars, which is probably more, once again, towards your rating. And also note, very interestingly, at the bottom there is a failure cost to not completing. So that means that it's a plus and minus. For instance, if you take one but you can't do it, then you're going to lose a lot of money. So let's just go through. We have to build a ship, reach 5,000 meters, escape the atmosphere, which more or less means goes above 70,000. That gives us, surprisingly enough, 29,000 credits to work with. And then, of course, Orbit Kerbin, which gives us a whopping near 60,000 credits. Not to mention 30 science, which is kind of impressive. Which means that if you're stuck, you could always take a contract instead of having to go out and try and find a far-off planet to do some science on. Which means that the contracts will also play in fact to continuing your science. Now, as you can see, the credits counter due to the advances that I'm getting, is slowly going up. Right now it's sitting at about 36,000, which means that I have 36,000 to build my rocket. So, let's head over into the VAB and try and build something. Now, we're just starting out with the basic pod. If you noted, the angle has shifted. It used to point to what would be now the camera's left. They've changed up the center of mass, center of thrust, other stuff. Also note, you can no longer place 6 of anything around. You can only place 4, which is kind of interesting. So, as you can look, not much has changed. Simple rocketry. The background has seemed to get a little bit nicer. Everything's a little bit more clean. A lot more curls, and it seems like they're a little bit smaller. You have vehicles, calling it the Piggy 1. Yeah, and we'll just put that there. Head off into space now. First set of boosters. It looks good. And if you look, there's something very interesting. When you have an engine and you have an engine firing on top of it, it no longer counts that thrust. If you go back into the video after the first after the first set of boosters hit and I pressed the second one, I slowed down a lot because I couldn't control it, or I wasn't getting any velocity out of the thrusters. So that'll be something to keep in mind. You can no longer stack up thrusters, which is kind of a problem, but then again, it's been a bug, so no more infinitely glitching. We'll aim for an orbit. We've already completed 3, which is quite impressive, and it looks like I'm about to run out of fuel. Yeah, because all my canisters are used, and yep, not quite an orbit, but we did get 3. So, we'll just double check everything, get out, do some science, record some logs, and head back into atmosphere, flip the spacecraft around, pop the parachute, and warp up to 4 times speed on top of 4 times speed. Burning up an atmosphere, deploying chute, dropping down, and this is actually quite fast now, which is kind of nice for my recordings. Let's see, will it survive? Yes, barely, just the pod left. And as you can see, a lot of science, a lot of notoriety. We have a whole lot. As you can see, I've gone for basic rocketry, some of the aerodynamics, and the survivability, which includes parachutes and other stuff. 3 science reports, and now we have 3 more. We have an R&D, and these have expiring times, which means that you have a certain amount of time in order to get these. So, as you can see, you have 2 days to accept it. And then this one expires in 1 day, 2 hours, 22 minutes, yeah. But this thing has to be at multiple stages. So this is actually going to be kind of a challenge. I still gotta orbit Kerbin, but we also have other stuff, which means that the deadline is also in, like, a year. So,